I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
I'd like to welcome you to the Challenge. Today we got a special guest, Vern and Iris Mitchell. We're discussing something that unfortunately is not so prevalent in the African American community, which is a long-term marriage. And if you were able to view the first half, we talked about them meeting and getting married. And in this half, we're going to talk about how do you sustain 30 plus years of a relationship. And it's not to say that this is some formula, but it's definitely some insight into some of the trials and tribulations and the triumphs of being in a committed relationship. So again, I'd like to welcome you both back. How you guys doing?
Fine, thank you.
All right, so now we're gonna, as I didn't say the first half, but my favorite saying is we're gonna get into it. And we talked and we left with you guys meeting and getting married. So let's go to the 5-year point. And 5 years of being married, what are you thinking now? This is good. This is nice.
I don't think there was a thinking process. I think that there was a living process.
Mm-hmm.
We had 2 children.
Right.
The one thing that was always a common ground for us was being parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that was important for us for different reasons. Iris comes from a family, a close-knit family. Her father died early. I never met the gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
But their memories of him is still fond, and memories of their family life coming up is still fond memories for her. She wanted to continue that. As a matter of fact, there are 6 in her family, 3 boys and 3 girls. And 4 people in her family have long-term relationships.
Mm-hmm.
One of them over 40 years.
Okay.
And he's a year younger than us. So on the flip side, in my family, a lot of dysfunction, fragmentation in the family. I didn't know about the value of family. So being parents was important for both of us, and it was the glue. And so we just ran on auto drive.
That was our priority.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The kids, our family unit, that was our priority. There wasn't a lot of us.
Right.
That pretty much came second.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else, it was the 4 of us, the 2 kids. That's where all of our energy was focused.
Now, oftentimes, not want to say often, but sometimes that could be a point of contention, and that could lead to discourse, because, and I have 2 kids, and I was talking to someone. Looking back, I didn't know how their mom was going to parent. We didn't have what do you think about this? It was just like, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Yes. So yes. I mean, it ended up working out, and our styles were completely opposite. So when it came to parenting, where were you guys at? Did you guys have this, if this happens, we're going to do this, or it was kind of like
trial by error, and there would be times when we would bump heads.
Mm-hmm.
But again, because our common love was for those kids, we could work through that, because
Mm-hmm.
it was always about what was best for the kids.
Right.
Even though Vern and I had different styles, those kids, that they were first and foremost for us.
Right.
So we could come together, we could sit down, and there were certain fears that Vern brought into the relationship, even as a father,
Mm-hmm.
from some of his own life experiences. And so they would crop up in the course of our raising, particularly my son.
Certain fears, you want to elaborate either one?
Vern was out of the house at a very early age.
Mm-hmm.
He got into different things that he didn't feel good about.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to prevent my son from walking down that same path.
Okay.
So a lot of times his approach to his parenting brought those fears with him. because now he'll say if he could go back, there would be certain things he would do different. But I was there. I was a buffer, you know, and sometimes we were like good cop, bad cop. Not intentionally. It would just, you know, develop in that manner. So when it was all said and done, it all worked out for the best. We've got 2 amazing children.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I believe the family definitely raises a child a certain way. So in this relationship, what is it like? Because now you're dating, now you're married. Is it like, do you still go out on dates? I'm talking about early on. Do you say like, look, we need to go out, we need to do something together?
We would do it.
Yeah, but we
were
were connected
homebodies.
to our kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
we were such homebodies.
It was what was natural for us was when we planned anything, it was planned with the 4 of us.
Right.
Like, you know, and we had, and our mothers, Iris's mom lived right behind us on Huntington Street. We lived in an apartment that faced the street, and her apartment building was right behind the building.
Oh, okay.
So we had access anytime we needed. And my mother lived on Laurel Street, which was a couple of blocks. So we had access to babysitters, but we did everything as a family. And her brother, the one who's been with his wife for over 40 years, and her sister, who got married November, a couple of months before us, right? They have children. So we always, a date for us was we'd get together.
Everybody get together. All right, so we're gonna get into the serious stuff, because I know, man, you can't sustain 30-something years and be all in the whole 30 years. Correct. So there had to be, I'm making an assumption, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. There had to be points, and I'll start with Iris, that you didn't want to continue in this relationship. Now, how did you navigate through that?
It was tough, particularly because I was in this for the long haul. After the kids had gotten older through high school and started, you know, doing their own thing and being their own people, now it was me and Vernon. And
That buffer is gone.
Right, exactly.
Correct, yeah.
So now here, the two of us are here together, and do we know each other? The love was there, but do we even like each other?
Right.
Because it was always the kids in between us. You, Brian, know Vern's history, you know, a recovering addict, and so that's what replaced the kids. Now here's a new entity in the mix, and it was at that point that I didn't know if I wanted to continue in the marriage, because I had never dealt with anything like this before, and so it brought up a lot of fears in me. And where do we go from here? Vern was pretty much absent for a good window, emotionally absent for a good window of that part of our relationship. So we were in turmoil. We were in trouble.
Let me ask you this, because I spoke to another person about this topic, not this specific topic, but when you're committed and like what that means for everybody. Because to me, that means anything. And it sounds like that's what it meant for you, that you can't pick and choose the strife. You know what I'm saying? It is, and then if I'm committed, then I'm gonna do my best. So it seems like you definitely took that road that, you know, it's not what I want, I don't even like it, I might even despise what's going on, but you still felt a need or a commitment to kind of support and stay with it.
I think the commitment at that point it wasn't about the marriage, because it had gotten to a point where there wasn't anything I was going to be able to do about that. The commitment was to Vernon as my friend now. He's not my husband. There's this person that I know who's been my friend for pretty much most of my life, and he's hurting, he's in pain. What can I do?
Right.
How can I help him? But it got to a point where I had to recognize that it was costing me and my emotional well-being to try to help him, because he wasn't ready.
Right.
So it was at that point I had to turn inside. What am I going to do?
All right.
You know, and after all these years, what am I going to do? And I had to think about, if we don't make it, being by myself and everything else that comes along with that.
And then, Vern, what do you think? What were you? Because you were in the same spot, so that's the way Iris was looking at.
I think that while the kids were growing up, I assumed traditional roles, right? You know, I took out the garbage, you know, I shoveled the snow, whatever. I took on the traditional roles, and in my mindset, Iris was responsible for traditional roles. She cooked the food and took care of the kids, that type of stuff. My children were the first time in life that I felt needed. When as they grew and they got to a point where they became more and more independent, I started to withdraw emotionally. That's where the drugs came in. And so when the kids finally left, I thought it was Iris's responsibility to make me happy.
Right.
I had been happy before. They're gone now, it's your job.
Right.
This relationship didn't become really healthy until, in terms of an intimate relationship between two people, until I recognized for myself that another person cannot make you happy.
Right.
And certainly not be responsible for that. It took a long time to get to a point, a lot of rehabilitation, drug rehabilitation, to get to a point where I started taking responsibility for my own happiness, which is internal. And so now, instead of holding each other responsible for that, we simply enjoy each other. We have different paths, but we still have commonality.
Right.
That's how this relationship continues to work.
So now you look at now, because what happens is you can't compartmentalize, so you can't take parts. So now you go into year 34, and then you sit back and reflect. And what do you come up with?
Well, one of the things that we did well for us was when my son moved out and we were finally, it was just me and Iris, we went to counseling. And we weren't having any issues at that point. Any emotion, there was no strife, there was no tension. What we said was we never really had been just the two of us. When we got together, we already had a daughter from a previous relationship. So it started out with Iris and I and a child. And it grew from there. So this was the first time in life we were really going to be just the two of us. So we went to counseling to make sure that we had there was some commonality, and we quickly discovered that we enjoyed each other. We had a lot of things in common, and so and you're right. You can't compartmentalize a piece here and a piece there. It's either all in or nothing.
And one of the things is you got to check in. Not just with each other, you got to check in with yourself.
Right.
You know, what's going on. And Vern's very good at checking in, so to speak. Babe, everything's okay. He's got a lot on his plate. He's always got a lot on his plate. But we're always checking in with each other to see, you know, is there something we need to talk about? Is there, you know, just what's going on? Pretty much what's going on.
The C word, which is big. It's big in our community. As African Americans, we could get in the health issue. We could get in, you know, we just don't communicate well.
There you go.
Publicly, privately, and it seems like going to counseling is, to me, is putting that commitment forth, and also the need to be able to communicate, because there's just inherent ways that people communicate that's individual. So even before you met, you communicated a certain way, she communicated a certain way, and that's interesting that you guys think that that has to somehow come together.
I think it's a big component of a relationship, especially a long-term relationship.
And then honesty. Where does honesty lie?
Well, the honesty lies within, right? Like I need to be, like you think about some of the natural things that make a relationship, or what people think are natural things, you know, being trustworthy. But that trustworthiness is for me, not for her. In other words, the things that I would not do outside my marriage isn't because of Iris.
Because he's married.
Right, that's for me.
Right, I see. Yeah.
And so, but you said communicate well, and that's the key. And the issue is this: sometimes we dance around issues because we don't want to hurt feelings, right? Then what happens is there's an assumption. An assumption grows and it continues to get fed, and now and now two people are working differently.
Right.
So we have gotten to a point where we can have those difficult conversations, to be able to say, listen, I don't really like how you did that.
Right.
Right. We have, the relationship continues to require work, and that work really just means the openness in the communication, so that today she can say something to me that might hurt my feelings, right? And usually because it's the truth. That's what hurts, is the truth, right? But because I know she got my back, I don't care what she says, I'm going to listen. Even if in the end I disagree, I'm going to listen because I know that her motive, her ulterior motive, is what's best for me. So we don't dance around sensitive issues. We talk directly about what's going on with us.
And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens over time.
Absolutely.
It's a process.
And that you know what? And we have to wrap it up, but that is a very good point, because that's the value that I think some of our younger people don't get. Like, you can't get that in a year.
No.
You have to have 30 years to get that, and there's no shortcut to getting to that place. And it's a great amount of value, and I saw that with my mom and dad, that there's a great amount of value to that. So even though it's strife and struggle and all of that, but in the end, it's a wonderful thing. So hopefully you guys were able to enlighten some people and that might be struggling in this area, and give them some hope. So thank you both for coming in today, and maybe we can continue this at a different time.
Well, I wanted to say one last thing, is that we talked about in the early days we talked about the feeling and the dating and stuff, and I used the term infatuation, and people think that there's a stage that ends, but it doesn't.
Right.
I'm still infatuated.
All right. That's a great way to end. Thank you both.
Thank you.